come down to Plains, Georgia, and brief him on the UFO issue. And it turns out that the CIA director at that time was George H.W. Bush.
Do a big UFO discussion today on campus, which actually, what did that entail? You're trying to get it as a part of the educational curriculum?
Yeah, we're trying to get it into the academy, the general university community, to say, look, this is silly that, that now that the United States Defense Department has acknowledged that they've been lying all this time in hiding this stuff, and you got testimony coming in, from the people directly involved in the top secret program, acknowledging that the government's in possession of a non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft, and the bodies that they've now confirmed are non-human. You would think that would have some impact on the university. That they ought to be kind of teaching some courses about getting ready for this, but they haven't yet. So we went over to Yale. They've got invited over there by some of the professors. So we went over and did a presentation today to the student body.
What professors, if you don't mind me asking?
One of the professors of philosophy. It was one of the professors of two professors of philosophy. In fact, one of them was an East Asian philosophy professor, and the other was an American Western philosophy guy. And then they had the student body they have a UFO student organization. There.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that they sponsored it. So it was the students themselves that asked us to come, and they had professors from a couple of different universities. Ohio State University, a professor was there. They had a professor from University in Albany, so they had a group of people there, and I briefed them all on what was going on in Washington with the legislation and the hearings and the stuff like that.
Yeah, I see it all sitting right there. We're going to get into it today.
Yeah.
But now you're back in Hoboken, straight off Yale.
Yeah, it was hard to stay away.
Well, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. There's a lot to get into. Our first episode, we basically went through every single conspiracy of the 60s and 70s that you lived through. Uh-huh. It was pretty incredible.
A lot of them, yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm sure there will be other cases that come up today as well that didn't come up yesterday, but specifically with ufology and the space of what's going on in our skies, you have been around this since, I believe you said, the Jimmy Carter administration?
Yeah, it was the fall of 76, right after the November election that I got contacted.
And you had explained this quickly in our last podcast, but for people who didn't hear that,
sure.
Why did he contact you?
Well, what happened is that President Carter, when he was the governor of Georgia, had seen a UFO back in 1969. He was at a Lions Club, a speech that he was giving as the governor, and they went over to the restaurant for dinner, and there was a UFO right in the sky. It was like the two lengths of a football field away. I mean, it wasn't like a mysterious light in the sky or anything. It was like a full UFO, and he saw it. 11 men saw it with him. He filed an official report with the U.S. Air Force and with NICAP. So when he ended up getting elected president, it turns out he was elected on November 4th of 1976. On the 19th of November, he was still down in Plains, Georgia. He hadn't even come to Washington yet. That he sent word to have the head of the Central Intelligence Agency come down to Plains, Georgia, and brief him on the UFO issue. And it turns out that the CIA director at that time was George H.W. Bush, and that he refused to brief him, saying that he, as the president-elect, he had no need to know this information, which surprised President Carter. And so Carter, rather than taking on the CIA and spending a lot of newly earned political capital, just contacted the Congress and said, "What's the story here? I've been elected president. We're supposed to know about this? Can you tell me what the documents are that we've got?" And so that they referred it to the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives, and they contacted the Congressional Research Service, which is this big professional service research operation they have at the Library of Congress. And so they set up a special investigation and research project. Now, I didn't know anything about it when it happened. I mean, I'd met Carter when he was a candidate. because I was at Jesuit headquarters down there in Washington, D.C., and I was in the public policy office of they call it the social ministry office at the Jesuit headquarters. So I was responsible for helping to formulate the policies of the Jesuit order with regard to all 15 of the cabinet level positions in all 8 of the major federal agencies. And so one afternoon in early May, I guess it was probably, of 1976, I was over in DuPont Circle by where our headquarters is, right on Embassy Row. And I ran into they had a new headquarters there during the primary. It was the Democratic Party primary, and they had the office for candidate Jimmy Carter. So I just popped in and said, "Look at." I told him who I was, and it turns out that Stu Eisenstadt was there. Stuart Eisenstadt was his director of public policy for his campaign. So we sat down and had a long conversation, and we set up a meeting for candidate Jimmy Carter to come and meet with the heads of all 54 of the major religious denominations that had headquarters in Washington, D.C. And so our office coordinated that. Our Jesuit headquarters coordinated that. We set it up over at 100 Maryland Avenue, over at the Methodist Building on Capitol Hill. And we had a long meeting with him. We got him actually in that meeting to agree that if he were elected president, he would issue a presidential executive order cutting off all U.S. military aid to any foreign dictator that was determined to be systematically violating the human rights of his own citizens. And that is the executive order that he did in fact issue when he was elected.
When you say you guys, you're talking specifically about, like, on this case, on behalf of like the Jesuit community and all the religious.
The Jesuit headquarters. We'd organized a thing called the Washington InterReligious Staff Council. There were 54 major religious denominations that had Washington D.C. offices that would kind of monitor legislation that was going on, et cetera. In briefing their different denominations. And the Jesuit headquarters had organized bringing them all together to form a new coalition so that we could set up task forces so that we could not duplicate each other's work. And so that we had that thing set up. So when I happened to meet Stuart Eisenstadt that May of 76, I told him about the group that we had and that we'd be happy to interview Carter, and we did. And so that we formulated this plan to figure out one specific thing that we would ask him.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.